guard's platform at Elsinore, Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo are confronted with the ghost of the late King Hamlet of Denmark, which appears but will not speak. Horatio decides to tell his fellow student, Prince Hamlet, about the ghost's appearance.
In an audience chamber in Elsinore, Claudius, the new king of Denmark, holds court. After thanking his subjects for their recent support, he gives Laertes permission to return to France, but denies Hamlet's request to return to the University of Wittenberg. Hamlet, mourning for his father's death, is left alone to vent his despair at what he regards as his mother's all-too-hasty marriage to his uncle Claudius. Horatio, Bernardo, and Marcellus arrive to tell Hamlet about the ghost. Hamlet, aroused by the news, agrees to join them that night.
In Polonius' chamber, Laertes says goodbye to his sister Ophelia and tells her to beware of Hamlet's promises of love. Polonius joins them, sends Laertes off with fatherly advice, and then echoes his warning to Ophelia, finally forbidding her to see Hamlet again.
While Claudius drinks the night away, Hamlet, Horatio, and Marcellus are visited by the ghost. The ghost signals to Hamlet to follow, and despite his friend's efforts, he does.
Look, my lord, it comes! Angels and ministers of grace, defend us! Be thou a spirit of health or a goblin damned. Bring with thee airs from heaven or blasts from hell. Be thy intents wicked or charitable. Thou comest in such a questionable shape that I will speak to thee. I'll call thee Hamlet, King, Father, Royal Dane, oh answer me! Let me not burst in ignorance, but tell why thy canonized bones, hearsed in death, have burst their cerements. Why the sepulchre, wherein we saw thee quietly inurned, hath oped his ponderous and marble jaws to cast thee up again. Say, why is this? Wherefore, what should we do?
It beckons you to go away with it, as if it's some impartment it desire to you alone.
Look, with what courteous action it wants you to remove it ground, but do not go with it.
No, by no means.
It will not speak, then will I follow it.
Do not, my lord.
Why? What should be the fear? I do not set my life at a pin's fee. And for my soul, what can it do to that, being a thing immortal as itself? It waves me forth again, I'll follow it.
What if it tempt you toward the flood, my lord, and there assume some other horrible form that might deprive your sovereignty of reason and draw you into madness? Think of it.
You shall not go, my lord. Hold off your hands.
Ruled, you shall not go.
Unhand me, gentlemen. I say away. Go on. I'll follow thee.
He waxes desperate with imagination.
Let's follow. 'Tis not fit thus to obey him.
Have after. To what issue will this come?
Something is rotten in the state of Denmark.
Heaven will direct it.
Nay, let's follow him.
The ghost tells Hamlet a tale of horror, saying that his is the spirit of Hamlet's father. He demands that Hamlet avenge the death of King Hamlet at the hands of Claudius. Hamlet, horrified, vows to remember and swears his friends to secrecy about what they have seen.
Polonius sends his servant Ronaldo to Paris to question Laertes' acquaintance. Ophelia enters deeply disturbed about a visit she has just had from an apparently mad Hamlet. Polonius decides that Hamlet has become insane because Ophelia is refusing to see him. Polonius rushes off to tell the king.
Claudius and Gertrude set Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, two childhood friends of Hamlet, to spy on him in order to discover the cause of his apparent madness. Polonius reports that his discovery is that Hamlet is mad for love. Claudius is unpersuaded by this, but agrees to join Polonius in spying on Hamlet. When Hamlet himself enters, he is confronted first by Polonius and then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, whom he identifies as the king's spies. As they talk, a company of touring actors enters. Hamlet persuades one of them to deliver a speech and recognizes that he has shown less intensity in avenging his father's death than what the actor has done in the performance. Hamlet hopes that when the players stage the murder of Gonzago for the court, he can determine whether Claudius is guilty of his own brother's death.
After Rosencrantz and Guildenstern report their failure to find the cause of Hamlet's madness, Polonius decides to place Ophelia where he and Claudius may observe a meeting between them. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with a pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. Soft you now. The fair Ophelia. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.
Good my lord. How does your honor for this many a day?
I humbly thank you. Well. Well. Well.
My lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have longed to redeliver. I pray you now receive them.
No, not I. I never gave you aught.
My honored lord, you know right well you did. And with them, words of so sweet breath composed as made the things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again. For to the noble mind, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. There, my lord.
Are you honest?
My lord.
Are you fair?
What means your lordship?
That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty.
Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty?
Ah, truly. For the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. This was sometime a paradox, but now the time gives it proof. I did love you once.
Indeed, my lord. You made me believe so.
But you should not have believed me. For virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not.
I was the more deceived.
Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent, honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things, that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do, crawling between heaven and earth? We are errant knaves all, believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where is your father?
At home, my lord.
Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell.
Oh, help him, you sweet heavens.
If thou dost merit, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow. Thou shalt not escape calumny. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Farewell. Or thou wilt needs marry a fool. A wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery, go!
Heavenly powers restore him.
Oh. I have heard of your paintings too well enough. God has given you one face, and you make yourself another. You jig, you amble, and you listen. You nickname God's creatures and make your love this your ignorance. Go to. I'll know more on it. It hath made me mad. I say, we will have no more marriage. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. The rest shall keep as they are. To a nunnery. Go!
Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword. The expectancy and rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion, in the mold of form. The observed of all observers, quite down. And I, of ladies, most deject and wretched, that suck the honey of his music vows. Now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells, jangled out of tune, and harsh, that unmatched form and feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me to have seen what I have seen. And see what I see.
When Hamlet exits, Claudius decides to send him to England. Polonius persuades Claudius to take no action until Gertrude talks to him after a play, which is scheduled for that evening.
Hamlet gives direction to the actors and asks Horatio to help him observe Claudius' reaction to the play. When the court arrive, Hamlet makes bawdy and bitter comments to Ophelia. The traveling actors perform a story that includes elements of Claudius' alleged seduction of Gertrude and murder of King Hamlet. At the moment that the player king is murdered in his garden by his nephew, Claudius stops the play and rushes out. Hamlet is exuberant that the ghost's word has been proven true. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern return to tell Hamlet that Claudius is furious and that Gertrude wishes to see him at once in her sitting room. Hamlet promises himself he will not harm her, though he will speak daggers.
Claudius orders Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to take Hamlet to England immediately. Polonius arrives to tell Claudius of his plans to spy on Hamlet's conversation with Gertrude. Left alone, Claudius reveals to the audience his remorse for killing his brother and tries to pray. Hamlet comes upon him kneeling and draws his sword, but then stops to think that if he kills Claudius at prayer, Claudius will go to heaven. Hamlet decides to kill Claudius when the king is committing a sin so that he will instead go to hell. After Hamlet leaves, Claudius rises and says that he has been unable to pray.
In Gertrude's room, Polonius hides behind a tapestry. Hamlet's entrance so alarms Gertrude that she cries out for help. Polonius echoes her cry. Hamlet, thinking Polonius to be Claudius, stabs him to death. Hamlet then verbally attacks Gertrude for marrying Claudius. In the middle of Hamlet's attack, the ghost returns to remind Hamlet of his real purpose, to avenge his father's death. Gertrude cannot see the ghost and pities Hamlet's apparent madness. After the ghost exits, Hamlet urges Gertrude to abandon Claudius's bed. He then tells her about Claudius's plan to send him to England and reveals his suspicion that the journey is a plot against him, which he resolves to counter violently. He exits, dragging out Polonius's body. Gertrude reports Polonius' death to Claudius, who sends Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to find Hamlet and recover the body.
Hamlet refuses to tell Rosencrantz and Guildenstern what he has done with Polonius's body.
Hamlet is brought to Claudius, who tells him that he is to leave immediately for England. Alone, at the end of this scene, Claudius discloses to the audience that he is sending Hamlet to his death.
The now mad Ophelia insists upon seeing the queen and sings of death and betrayal. She leaves. Called back from France with news of his father's death, the angry Laertes bursts into the room demanding an explanation and vowing revenge. Claudius protests his innocence, but is interrupted by the return of the mad Ophelia. Laertes is devastated, and his fury is further kindled.
The sailors give Horatio a letter telling of Hamlet's capture and return to Denmark.
Claudius, in conversation with Laertes, also gets a letter from Hamlet announcing the prince's return. Claudius enlists Laertes' willing help in devising another plot against Hamlet's life. Laertes agrees to kill Hamlet with a poisoned rapier in a fencing match. If he fails, Claudius will give Hamlet a poisoned cup of wine. Gertrude interrupts their plotting to announce that Ophelia has drowned.
Hamlet, returned from his journey, enters a graveyard with Horatio, where a gravedigger is singing as he digs. Hamlet tries to find out who the grave is for, and meditates on the skulls that are being dug up. A funeral procession approaches. Hamlet soon realizes that the corpse is Ophelia's. When Laertes, in his grief, leaps into her grave and curses Hamlet as the cause of her death, Hamlet comes forward. He and Laertes struggle, with Hamlet protesting his own love and grief for Ophelia.
In the hall of the castle, Hamlet tells Horatio how he discovered the king's plot against him and how he turned the tables on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Osric interrupts to ask, on Claudius's behalf, that Hamlet fence with Laertes. Hamlet agrees to the contest, despite his misgivings. Hamlet is winning the match when Gertrude drinks from the poisoned cup that Claudius has prepared for Hamlet. Laertes then wounds Hamlet with the poisoned rapier. In the scuffle that follows, Hamlet forces an exchange of rapiers and wounds Laertes.
Nothing, Nutaway. Have at you now.
Nathan, come again!
Look to the queen there, hold! Outside, how is my lord? Justly killed in my own treachery.
How does the queen?
She's supposed to see them bleed. Oh, my sweet Hamlet! Drink!
Villainy! How? Let the door be locked! Treachery! Seek it out!
Is here, Hamlet. Hamlet, thou art slain.